A very good morning, everyone present here. And on behalf of organizing committee, I will welcome you all on the fourth day of lecture series come faculty development program being organized by Directorate of Research and Publication, MIT University, Uttar Pradesh, Lucknow. It is my great pleasure to welcome and introduce the expert of today's session, Dr. Vivekanand, who will talk about the conflict of interest, which could have association with financial, organizational, or authorship interest. And I think this is the one of the major factor being considered as the most important ethical concern nowadays in a publication. Dr. Vivekanand is joining directly from Sweden. He is in right now Sweden. So welcome, Dr. Vivekanand. Dr. Vivekanand is working as an assistant professor and has been head at the Center for Energy and Environment, Malviya National Institute of Technology, Jaipur, India from 2020 to 2022. He has completed PhD from Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee, India. He has been awarded with the highly prestigious Ramalingam Swamy Re-Entry Fellow from DBT, Government of India, National Doctoral Fellowship from All India Council of Technical Education, New Delhi, and Ministry of Education Assistantship at IIT Roorkee, India. He worked as a postdoctoral research scientist for 7 years in Sweden and Norway. At University of Gothenburg, Sweden, he was awarded seed grant from the Royal Society of Arts and Sciences, Sweden, to work on a low lignin oats. Subsequently, he worked on a biomass to bioenergy project with the premier Norwegian biomass research group at the Norwegian University of Life Sciences at Norway's National Facility of Biogas. Currently, he has 3 ongoing sponsored research projects: Indo-European, Indo-Russia, Indo-Egypt, in the area of bioenergy, and has completed 6 research and 4 consultancy projects funded by national and international funding agencies. He has keen research interest and expertise in biomass, pre-treatment, bioprocessing, as well as its conversion for bioenergy application. And mostly he has focused to seaweed, lignocellulose, agro-horticulture, biogenous residual material. He is closely associated with the Norwegian Center for Bioenergy Research, Norwegian Institute of Agriculture and Environmental Research, SLU, CAMBI, and TINEAS for conducting biomass-based research targeting the development and advancement of upcoming generation of biofuels. Presently, he has more than 89 international research articles published in SCI journal with a high repute and having H-index around 31. He has attended more than 31 conferences and authored book chapters around more than 9. He was also interviewed by University of Gothenburg, Sweden for extraordinary performance. Dr. Vivekanand has been listed in the top 2% of the world scientists, Elsevier and Stanford University consecutively for 2021 and 2022. Once again, I heartily welcome Dr. Vivekanand and invite you please proceed with his talk on the conflict of interest. Dr. Vivekanand, please.
Thank you so much, Professor Dwivedi and Mala Madam. And I also extend my warm thanks and greetings to MIT University Lucknow campus at Uttar Pradesh and all the Directorate of Research for inviting me, and above than inviting me, to organizing such a nice talk in the theme of research and publication ethics, which is of very prime importance in a current scenario. So in that case, I think the overall faculty development program MIT University is organizing, it's going to have a very high and deeper impact in the area of scientific research, and especially the researchers who are being deeply involved and putting their lot of effort, in conducting the research, getting funding, and it takes so much, effort from any one of us. So, and above all, this, especially the conflict of interest, is such a topic which everybody, should be aware of, and it plays a very important role in your scientific career. So I will directly start away, thinking that, is it okay? My slides are visible?
Yes, definitely.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So basically what it is. So it's a kind of critical issue, the conflict of interest in financial organization authorship, that affects the integrity and credibility of research as well as the publications. And in our world of academia as well as scientific research, these conflicts, they sometimes arise when financial considerations or organizational affiliations, they get compromised with the objectivity and impartiality of the authors. And these interests can occur in various norms like financial ties to sponsors, employment or consultancy relationships, personal and professional connections. So I'll go one by one slowly so that we could see in a more detail how it happens and what are the measures we can take, and we can minimize or remove these things from the research. And all these 3 points, bulleted points, they may bias the research outcomes or influence the selection of authors. And that creates all kind of challenges in carrying out the current research. So a situation in which an individual or entity, such as a researcher, author, or organization, has competing personal, financial, or professional interest that could potentially compromise their objectivity or a judgment in a particular decision making, that leads to development of conflict. And it could be influenced and be perceived to influence the actions, the decisions, and the outcomes of the individual or the entity involved in terms of carrying out the research or consultancy. It also arises in various contexts, like including but not limited to financial relationships, like somebody gave the name of funding agency or any other type of help provided in the section of acknowledgement, if you think about in the research paper at the last. And then employment affiliations, like, well, yeah, my institute has supported me with this, all that stuff. Consultancy, arrangements, and personal relationships, as well as the institutional or organizational affiliations. So, and especially the term stems from the financial gain or personal relationships, loyalties, or other factors. They could also create a bias and compromise the integrity of the decision making. So all these has to be well taken care of during the process of writing a paper or grant. So especially these conflict of interest, they are not inherently unethical or wrong. And when conflict of interest are not properly managed or disclosed or mitigated, they can undermine the trust, fairness, and the integrity of the decision-making process, particularly in the fields where objectivity and impartiality are paramount. So anything can be managed, but if somebody is doing it on deliberate basis, which is wrong. So even if we have committed some mistake, there is always a room where these errors can be corrected, and everybody can be, taken into confidence and trust that, yeah, there is nothing wrong, provided they all the stakeholders are in agreement. So addressing these kind of conflicts, that involves acknowledging their existence, because everybody wants to be on board. Yes, you are welcome with the proper contribution, actually. And then implementing transparency measures, why happened, how happened, all that kind of stuff. And disclosing relevant information. You might have seen that credit authorship in the publications, like if there are a number of authors, who has done what kind of activity in getting that publication ready. So like, yeah, somebody has reviewed, somebody has conceptualized the idea, somebody has performed the experiment, somebody has started to write the first draft of the manuscript, all that stuff. Somebody has provided funding, and then establishing policies and guidelines and taking appropriate steps to manage or mitigate the potential influence of these conflicts on the decision-making process. So these are the kind of, I won't say small steps, but these are the one of the most important steps to survive well in our world of academia and research, because they may seem that they are kind of very small or very engaging things, but they are actually the backbone of the research nowadays, especially. These examples They include employment or voluntary involvement, the conflict or financial interest, collaborations with advocacy groups related to the content of the article. If you are involved in publishing something extra which should not have been published, grants from an entity paid to the author or organization, it should be mentioned in acknowledgement at least. Personal fees received by authors as honoraria, royalty, consulting fees, lecture fees, testimonies, etc. Patents held or pending by the authors, their institutions or organizations, they should be acknowledged. Royalties, they should be acknowledged. Stocks or share ownership, that should also be acknowledged. Benefits related to the development of products as an outcome of the work, like nowadays, various entrepreneurship people and startup companies are coming up. So they must acknowledge who was the angel investor for that. And whatever, like many institutes, like even at MNIT Jaipur, we give, a lot of free uh, facility to these startup companies, and they acknowledge our institute whatever wherever they go, and then they get a very nice high level platform to showcase their company, that look here, we are getting incubated at NIT Jaipur. So all the time they keep on acknowledging us, and it's not limited to us. It's it goes beyond us to all the IITs, IIMs, and ITs. That companies are incubation and innovation centers who are getting incubated there. They are acknowledging, and that gives a positive impact that okay, they are so good. Their idea and products are so good. Their investors are so good that they have been getting incubated and getting supervised by some faculty member at an institute of national importance. So these kind of small steps, they give you a lot of positive feedback as well as a lot of unclaimed benefit actually. Then again, it goes on. The list the receipt of drugs, specialist equipment, tools, computer programs, or digital application. Like you got your some of the samples analyzed in some lab, your friend's lab, suppose gas chromatography. So you must acknowledge it that we would like to thank Dr. Flafla, and then shoots name for helping us in getting sample analyzed with the help of gas chromatograph. So it's a very kind gesture actually that solves many problems. And then access to data repositories, like you got some of the cultures and data from IARI or ICMR or any of one of the our own culture divisions or from foreign, it must be acknowledged. Holding a position on boards of industry bodies, that's also very important. Writing assistance or administrative support from person organization might benefit. Personal, political, religious, and other, you can see, including intellectual competing interest, which are perceived to be relevant to published content, should be acknowledged. And involvement in a legal action related to the work should also be acknowledged. Then the question comes, why it's important to address this? Why we are thinking so much of this other than our scientific research? Because they walk actually conflict of interest points as well as our research. They walk hand in hand. And if one is going to miss, your whole system will collapse actually. So before even starting the research, my personal view is to look at the conflict of interest points, solve that, manage that, and then only one can, go for research rather than other way around. Because you know what you will be doing, you know what kind of help and support you want from other people, and one has to be very kind in acknowledging help from whomsoever you are getting. And if you have that kind of thinking, you can always go ahead. So addressing the issues of the conflict of interest in financial organization authorship is of paramount importance for several reasons, like preservation of scientific integrity, where potential to compromise the objectivity and scientific integrity of research and publications is managed. Uphold the fundamental principles of scientific inquiry, and that also ensures the research findings are based on reliable unbiased evidences. If it's not, you have to repeat it. You have to reproduce the results. Protection of public interest, trust in scientific research, and release on it for making informed decisions about their health, safety, and well-being. Like suppose you are doing some kind of medical research, then you have to take a lot of permission, or even from DST and DBT, you have to take a lot of permission if the project is falling into that category. So erode public trust by casting doubts on the credibility and reliability of research outcomes. So one should not publish anything just with a very shallow background. Rather than you have to reproduce the results, you have to talk to the peers, you have to show the results and discuss it how good or bad the findings are, because there might be panic in the common public if you produce something just in a single round of experiments, which is bad for the humankind. So foster transparency and enhance public confidence in scientific advancement. Next is avoidance of bias and distorted results. Financial and organizational interest can introduce bias into research and publication process. Vested interest, that is very much common nowadays in specific outcomes or have ties to funding sources. Their objectivity may be compromised and leading to biased interpretations or selective reporting of results. Even I used to get very much, irritated when we get, in a very start of my career, like reviewers write, okay, change this word and change that word. That happens to everyone. So the point was that those words or the jargons or the keywords, they were correct, but a better form of adjective or word was available as an alternative, which was giving to the point information or leading to understand the right outcome to the reader of the journal rather than the term I used. So that was somehow helping in a way that I address the right information with the use of right keyword while you write the manuscript. So these are the very small things, but one has to use the appropriate terminology or wordings or their alternatives, which says the right information you want to convey to the readers of that particular manuscript in the particular list of journals. Then strive to minimize bias and ensure that research outcomes are driven by the pursuits of truth rather than personal or financial gain. That is very clear point. Promotion of fairness and equality. This kind of conflict can create disparities in access to research opportunities, because if there is no fairness, there is no equality. I think the P4 or 5 or 10 or hundreds of people on board as an author, everybody will try to do like why I am not there, why I have not faced the fairness in the system, and why I have not been equally treated. So being a corresponding author or lead author, you have to manage the whole group and tell them that why this is happening. Why certain when certain researchers or organizations with vested interests dominate the research landscape, it can hinder the equitable distribution of funding, collaboration opportunities, and the recognition as well. So one has to be very clear that we all are equal and everybody is here because of their contribution, and and sorry, everybody is there because of their contribution in the most appropriate manner possible for that particular kind of manuscript. Create a level playing field that fosters inclusivity, diversity, and fair competition. It's always good to talk to group of people who are having different professional backgrounds, especially if it starts from sciences, commerce, humanities, and all, because then your research do have financial outcomes a little bit. Your research do have some um, social outcomes or societal impact. So you have to have some representatives which may or may not be your friend, but at least a scientist, social scientist, or economist, or kind of real scientist in this particular area, then you manage to give a good quality paper by employing that you have done some science, you have also checked its viability of the process or the system you were working on with the help of some economics involved in it, where you have an expert who is in the area of economics and the sustainability of the system or the process. And you have also went for its study as a societal impact, which is, again led by one of your co-authors who is a social scientist. So this kind of a mature publication that is totally inclusive, you have diverse group of authors and you have fair competition, that is actually well appreciated. So if the paper is of that kind, if paper or the material or the results coming out of are not of that kind, you don't need to include all that. And these things, not getting applied in all the manuscripts, but wherever it is possible to do that kind of activity, one must, try that. And it turns out to be very good, actually. Am I audible, clear?
Yes, Dr. Vikram, you can hear.
Yeah, sometimes, just the connection goes and
No,
yeah.
it's perfect. It's perfect.
Uh, again, we'll continue why it is important to address this, because there is an ethical responsibility on us as a researcher, and authors have to be ethically responsible to conduct their work with integrity, transparency, and accountability. So these three terms, they sound very simple, but they are the main pillars, especially in the area of science or any area of research, science, social science, economics, humanities, any. So if one has these pillars, they are bound to get success, actually. And these ethical principles demonstrating a commitment to uphold highest standards of research conduct and promoting ethical decision making. Like nowadays, if you submit manuscript to, I think, any of the journals, they ask you to tick the box that ethical guidelines has been met, it has been approved by the committee, the type of research you are doing, all that stuff. So they want early clearance from the corresponding author that you have followed all these guidelines, so that in future there may not be any kind of challenge one has to face. Compliance with regulations and guidelines. These research institutions, funding agencies, and journals have established guidelines and regulations to manage conflict of interest, because you have already ticked in the submission portal, and it means that you agree with the things, and if something happens is later on, you are whole soul responsible for that kind of condition which is unwillingly being created. So by addressing all this, authors comply with these standards, ensuring that their work meets the requirements set forth by scientific community. So nowadays, as I told, like every publication house asks for the ethical clearance as well as the committee approval, result reproducibility, as well as the data repository. So all these steps are getting coming up just to make sure that whatever we are doing as a scientist, as a social scientist, as a humanities scientist, it's well appreciated and everything is under control of the corresponding author, and he or she is also responsible for this kind of activity. So I think there are some messages coming up. Okay. So type of conflict of interest. This is one of the financial conflicts, organizational, personal, intellectual, professional, as well as the secondary employment conflicts. So we'll go one by one with this. And they sound to be, common type of conflicts which arise now and then in the whole world. Actually, it's not that Indian scenario or European scenario or Australian or American scenario. This can arise anywhere, because we all are human beings, actually. The financial conflicts, they occur when an individual or entity has financial stake or potential gain that may influence their judgment, decision making, or actions. Suppose, let's say, like research funding. When researchers receive financial support or grants or sponsorship from external sources like private companies, industry associations, or government agencies, there are conflicts between the colleagues, and there might be conflict between the funding agency himself itself as well as the receiving person if they are not going to acknowledge the funding agency. Funding sources may have vested interest in specific research outcomes that align with their financial goals or products. I'll tell you further in detail. I'll connect the dots actually. Stock ownership. If a researcher holds a stock in company that is directly or indirectly related to their research or publication, it can create a financial conflict of interest, because whatever way you find, if you are financially involved, there will be, I'm sure there will be a little bit of bias. So one has to be that much strong and have that much level of honesty that it should not affect your research. Author may have incentives to promote positive findings or outcomes that benefits company's financial performance rather than the original reporting of the data sets you have observed during the experimentation. So these kind of things has to be well taken care of. If it's, I mean, there are theses, especially in most of the Western countries, that comes are getting submitted with negative results, and it has to be accepted, and it has been accepted. So it's not like whatever you are doing is going to give you a rosy picture or all set of positive results. You have to report the truth actually. So even if you are getting, um, funding or stock ownership or whatever, or even consultancy, one has to report the real truth or real data, whether it's going to harm the company or get the company more and more benefits. So you have to be like honest with your own profession, and you have to tell that these are the results I have found with this experimentation, and it's up to the board of the company or the administration of the company how they are going to take that results coming out from this kind of projects. Consulting relationships, researchers who have consulting agreements or employment contracts with organization, financial ties to entities can influence their decision making, research design, and data interpretation. My point is very clear. I'll explain it. Like, suppose even if you are going for consultancy for any project, you are getting your fees paid, you are getting the experimental fees paid, and you are getting your administration and overhead paid. So what is the problem in giving the right result what you have observed rather than um, just making some kind of extra benefit for the company? Because as a scientist, as a societal scientist or any other person, if you are having that caliber to go for consultancy, you have to report the truth, and you never know, the company person is there only for those things. So there should be zero fabrication. It should be direct one-to-one clear discussion, and of course you have to repeat the experiments so that they can be reproduced, or you are getting at least 3 sets of experiments which are almost similar. Or if you are getting 2 similar one out, then again you have to take this odd man out and again go for 3 new sets of experiments many times. Then only you can say confidently, like, okay, these are my findings, and these findings indicate like these systems to be closed or to be started, all those stuff with the consultancy businesses. So one should not affect the results coming out with the project based on some kind of financial gain or consulting relationships. Financial outcomes in case of intellectual property rights, ownership of patents, copyrights, or other forms of IPR can lead to conflict of interest. Like, suppose somebody has discussed their ideas with you during conference or during the meetings, etc., and then a person comes and writes projects, and then it's actually conflict of interest in the long run, because the whole world is small. Tomorrow or today, you are going to meet your good friend. Of course, if you want, you can discuss with him or her and say like you would like to collaborate on that particular idea, and then his or her ideas will be the same. Rather, you will be supplementing and complementing with your own laboratory or with your own ideas, and then you can make a very mature proposal and submit it to the funding agency for possible funding in the future. So that's the way one should work, rather than hijacking the system, or copying the idea and publishing, or writing projects on somebody else thinking. So that increases your more conflict and more distrust, etc. If a researcher has financial stake in commercialization of a specific product, it can bias their reporting or promotion of research findings. Industry relationships, I already told you the financial consultancy things. A sponsored travel or gifts, accepting a sponsored travel, hospitality, or gift from external entities can create financial conflict of interest, and these form of supports may influence the recipient's judgment, favoritism, or perception of the sponsoring entity. So one has to stay away, or even if you are going to get a sponsored travels or gifts, you have to be very clear with the sponsor about your integrity and ethical levels, that this is beyond your scope, and you are not going to go for any compromise for the results or the data you are working for them. Organizational conflict occur when an individual or entity has affiliations, roles, or responsibilities and relationships with an organization that could potentially compromise their objectivity, impartiality, or decision making. It arises from the influence that organization ties can have on individual's professional responsibilities, research, or publication activities. So suppose you have left that organization and you have worked during that period, what you are getting published now. In a star, you can say like, yeah, this work was performed at that particular institute, but now I have shifted job and your current address is this. So that gives you a very positive energy that your employer, the ex-employer, it also appreciates that you remember them, and you are, yeah, they are in your good memories, and you have a nice warm relationships with the ex-employer, as well as you are also trying to tell that you are a good human being other than a scientist or social scientist, that you take care of many things. Employment relationships and individuals' employment with specific organizations such as company, university, research institution can create organizational conflicts. As I told you, like if you're not going to acknowledge them and you have performed the real work in that particular institution, you must acknowledge them. If not, it's wrong actually. The obligations or loyalty of employing organization may influence their decision making. So one has to stay away these kind of things. Contractual or consulting relationships. When an author or researcher enters into contractual or consulting agreements with organizations, conflict of interest can arise. So you have to be very clear what you are signing and what is written in those upper two starred lines, what you are signing without reading actually. So these agreements may involve providing specialized services, expertise, or advice to the organization. Uh, Organizational affiliations, holding positions or having significant affiliation with an organization that have a vested interest in the research topic can create conflict of interest. Like if you are mentioning some organization just for sake of mentioning them, because you are getting some untold benefits, you should avoid actually. You should never do that, because it brings really a bad name in scientific jargon. For instance, if an author serves on a board of directors or has a leadership role in organization that stands to benefit from a specific research finding, their objectivity may be compromised. So one should avoid that. I mean, there are no free lunches actually. So basically, one should avoid these kind of activities just to serve and in a nice way rather than putting anybody on board and why and how, etc. Then when individuals are embedded with organizations, they may be influenced by priorities, goals, or agendas of those organizations. So if you're putting some organization, they are somehow, if they're funding your project, that's fine. But if they are funding your project in a other way around for their own, agendas or some completing some of their priorities and trying to influence you, it can be avoided. This can include pressure to produce certain outcomes which you have never got in your experimentations, promote specific products, like if they have some kind of prototype or some kind of commercial product, um, just without any scientific basis, or services like, okay, just putting it in a public interest, like, okay, this service is very good from this particular organization, then it should not be done by a particular scientist, uh, because this will bring a bad name to your organization as well as to yourself.
Papa?
Then type of conflict of interest, again, it goes on, like personal conflict. We have already seen that when an individual personal relationship biases or loyalties could potentially affect their judgment or decision making. This can include relationships with family members, close friends, mentors, or colleagues that may create a perceived or actual conflict of interest. So that actually says, like, whether you are going to be there or not. Intellectual conflict, when an individual or entity has strong pre-existing beliefs, ideological positions, these can, lead to the decision making distorted, as well as the research outcomes in a different form, which again can lead to the conflict. And these may arise due to deeply held convictions or associations with a specific school of thought, uh, which should be analyzed in a deeper way once you are starting the things at your end. Professional conflict, individuals' professional responsibilities or obligations, they create conflicts with their decision making or actions. I mean to say, like, there are many instances where you are your own co-authors. They don't want to, create any kind of conflicts, but there are situations sometimes which is beyond even corresponding author or co-author's control, and it looks like that there is a huge level of conflict of interest, and because of very small, point, and if that gets well managed, you all are happy actually, and if it's ignored, everybody is in deep mess. Secondary employment conflict, this type of situation arises when an individual holds multiple positions or engages in secondary employment that could compromise their ability to fulfill their primary professional responsibility and objectivity. Conflicting time commitments or divided loyalties between multiple organizations can lead to conflict, like you have been changing your job, writing, manuscript for publication, and again you didn't forget, but you didn't care whom I am giving the acknowledgement that this was performed in this facility and this institute is acknowledged. I extend my thanks to the funding agency, and since you have been moving really fast, so somehow you missed it because of your carefree attitude, and then there is a conflict from your ex-employer arises that, oh, look, this fellow, he did all those experiments and funding from us, and now he's not giving any kind of, any kind of contributory assignment to us, or any kind of acknowledgement is getting extended to us as a company or organization, although we have helped him a lot in doing this kind of project. So one has to be very, very kind and very sincere in observing these things and bringing these things on the paper once the situation arises. Recognition and academic credit. Authorship serves as a means of recognizing and attributing the intellectual contributions of individual to a research project or publications. So you do have project investigators and co-project investigator, corresponding author, first author, and a number of co-authors. So everybody is there because of a reason, based on their contribution in that particular paper or in that particular research proposal. There should not be a single seat which is getting filled without any kind of contribution. Because if you are 10 people, 11th comes all of a sudden on the paper or on the research project, everybody with these 10 people is very much curious to know why these 11th people have jumped or came all of a sudden without contributing the project or manuscript significantly. So the corresponding author or the lead author or the PI has to be very well aware of this fact that everybody is just watching him, and this kind of circus cannot be accepted actually. It allows researchers to receive proper credit for their work, which is essential for their career advancement, professional reputation, and opportunities for collaboration. And it all depends on your contribution, even in writing the manuscript or writing the proposal or carrying out some of the experiments mentioned in the proposal. Accountability and responsibility. Authors are accountable for integrity and accuracy of the research findings presented in a publication. By attaching their name to a paper, authors take responsibility for content and methods employed, ensuring that work meets rigorous scientific standards and ethical guidelines. Many times, actually, we have seen that in the materials and methods section, they simply write like XYZ et al. 2002. I mean, if you have done it, the materials and method, there might be little bit of tailoring of the methodology, because that 100% methodology cannot be fit to your experiments, what XYZ et al. Have performed in 2002. And your experiment is not same. If it is same, it hardly needs to get published because they have already done it. So the type of tweaking, the type of methodology you have taken off route, or you have added or deleted some of the steps in performing that experiment, you must mention that. And it should be very clear that XYZ et al. 2002 procedure, that is around 80% of the procedure you have followed, and rest 20% of the procedure you have tailored it according to your experiment. Then it is well justified actually for your own paper or your own work. I'm sure 100% of the same methodology is not going to work to any one of us. So this kind of things should happen, where you claim your own tailoring of the methodology, as well as the person's methodology whose major part or major flow or major steps you have followed in performing the particular experiment. So transparency and reproducibility, I think the same things gets repeated when you say like you have performed this, and not only say rather you performed, and you get almost same type of results in all those reproducing results at least 3 times in triplicates, and go for standard deviation calculation, etc. And if you are getting 2 consecutive results, fine, one is getting very high or very low value, I think you must repeat all these 3 experiments again. And if you are again not getting concurrent values, you should try and you should go for troubleshooting that what is the problem, you are not, why you are not getting the value is correct. So these kind of serious experimentation, these kind of minute observations, they will help you in strengthening the career as well as strengthening the experiments in the project you are working on. Expertise and specialization. Authorship indicates the expertise and specialization of individuals involved in the research. Suppose if there is nothing has been done in the manuscript for the society, and unnecessary there is a co-author who is sitting as a co-author on board in the paper and who is a social scientist. I mean, there must have a reason why her or his name is there. It enables readers to assess the qualification and knowledge of authors in a specific field, enhancing the credibility and relevance of the research. The point is that there should be only people who have really contributed to the assignment, who have really a background expertise that suits well, and the paper what you are having for possible publication, it fits with the journal as well as the expertise of the people on board. Collaboration and teamwork should never be ignored. Everybody should be on board if they have contributed, and authorship should be acknowledged and celebrated the collaborative efforts of researchers, fostering a sense of teamwork and promoting interdisciplinary collaboration. Intellectual property and ownership. Authorship establishes the ownership of intellectual property rights, IPR, associated with the research. I think this goes on individual level and vis-a-vis at institute level also. So if your institutes are like endorsement letter, we get it signed from the institute, suppose your institute and my institute. So both of the heads of the institutes, they sign it. And of course, there is a line from the funding agency that it will be, or from the institute, that IPR guidelines will be followed of the institute if the situation arises. So it means that the IPR comes not for the faculty only, but it goes to the institute. And then both the institutes can sit together, talk together, and agree that who is going to, to take the credits and how we share the credits, all that stuff, if the project is of that kind. So there should not be any kind of hanky-panky business like this is mine, this is yours, you are having zero IPR, I'm having 100% IPR, and the ownership of the product or prototype or the ideas or the research outcomes, all those stuff. It should be well managed priorly rather than, taking these things at the last moment and just, discussing the matter over the table. Funding and grant requirement. Funding agencies and institutions often require authors to be named in publications resulting from their support. I think we all get messages and mails like it has to be acknowledged. And when you write project, even there are funding agencies which specifically tell you, suppose you have never written a project, and then they try to make you understand what and how you should acknowledge them that they have funding if you get it. Authorship documentation is crucial for demonstrating compliance with funding requirement and ensuring transparency in the use of research funding. Peer review and editorial process. Authorship is essential for peer review and editorial process, and these can rely on authorship list to assess the appropriate expertise and qualifications of authors, ensuring that the review and publication process are conducted by qualified individuals. And this kind of authorships play a vital role in academic and scientific publications by providing recognition, accountability, transparency, and ensuring the integrity and credibility of the research. It promotes collaboration, fosters intellectual growth, and supports the advancement of knowledge in various fields. So in that case, because it's kind of, mouth publicity, if you are doing wrong, the scientific parlance is really small. Today or tomorrow, everybody knows you, and you may have good or bad name because of your actions in these kind of activities. So in that case, I think if you are doing good, if you are being kind based on the contributions, you are going to flourish like anything. So you have to be, with a large-hearted person, like you should acknowledge the people and funding agency whosoever have supported you, your group, and your research in terms of funding, in terms of paper writing, grant writing, etc. So that gives you a very strong and firm foundation for your own future research career, actually. Authorship and funding still goes on, like funding sources can create conflict of interest in authorship when there is a financial relationship or dependence between author and entities. These conflict of interest can arise. Biased reporting, funding sources such as pharmaceutical companies or industry associations may have interest in research outcomes. We'll see there are company things we will go through. This can lead to biased reporting or selective presentations of results that favors the interest of funding source. And authors may feel pressurized to present findings in a way that aligns with the expectation of funding entity, compromising the objectivity and integrity of the research. Influence on study design. If authors have financial ties to funding sources, there is a risk of these ties influencing the design and conduct of a study. Research questions, methodology, sample selection, or other aspects of study that could favor their own interest. And this can lead to bias in the study design and potentially compromise the validity and reliability of the research. So it's not like, and of course there are a number of disasters happening nowadays because of this kind of activities, even on site, and billions of Indian rupees or dollars are getting wasted because of the wrong reporting. So one has to be very much careful with this kind of activities. Suppression of negative results, financial relationships with funding sources can create a conflict of interest, and that may discourage authors from reporting negative or unfavorable results. So one has to be honest, what you have got, it has to be reported. If the funding source expects positive outcomes or has a vested interest, authors may be reluctant to publish or emphasize such results, which can undermine the completeness and accuracy of the scientific literature, and your own name and your own group's name or your own lab's name can be saved, getting much more ruined because of this kind of activity. So one has to have that much integrity that you should report only the real findings you have got in experimentation with a lot of confidence, so that there is a reproducibility of the results and you are firm and sure that what you are reporting is 100% correct. Intellectual property and patent interest. Funding resources may have IPR and patent interest in the research outcomes. This creates a conflict of interest for authors who have financial or employment ties with the funding entity. Managing these kind of interest arise. Okay. Yeah. Disclosures of financial relationships and affiliations are essential for transparency. Journal editors, research institutions, and funding agencies often have policies and guidelines to place to address and manage these kind of conflicts, including the requirement of authors to disclose their financial ties and potential conflict of interest. You might have seen once you submit, like there is a zero conflict of interest between the co-authors or with the journal or with the publication houses or with the funding agencies. One has to tick that. So that is not just for being there, it has a lot of meaning actually. Instances where, okay. I think it is going to be 1 hour if you want to have a break, sir.
You can hear me, right? Actually, mostly we continue the session till like 1.5 hours, and then we have a discussion part.
Okay.
It's like more like continuing session.
Okay, so I'll continue and then we can have later discussion. Yeah.
Yes.
And participants, you are very much welcome to ask questions or interrupt me in between, so that it's not goes only as a lecture, rather than it goes as a more fruitful discussion. Yeah. So I'll continue, and wherever you feel like you need to stop me and ask the questions, you are very welcome. The instances where financial ties to funding sources have influenced authorship decisions are not uncommon. There are industries and many other organizations where there is a little bit of challenging situation, like pharmaceutical industry. In this field, the medical research, there have been cases where pharmaceutical companies funding clinical trials or studies have influenced the outcomes or interpretation of the results. And researchers who have financial ties to these companies may be more inclined to publish positive or favorable results to these companies, downplaying the potential risks or side effects of the drug, particularly. Tobacco industry, as I already told you, like I will be discussing these in the upcoming slides. So these tobacco industries has history of influencing research and authorship decisions to downplay the harmful effect of smoking. And people who receive funding by these companies have been found to suppress or manipulate the data or fabricate the data to downplay the links between smoking and various health conditions which may arise due to the smoking, actually. So, of course, there is a picture of, cancerous areas on the cigarette or any kind of smoking or tobacco things, but that is for common people, and of course they have been well documented and well observed in the laboratory conditions, but people, they go and little bit downplay it. Biased research in food and beverage industry. Studies funded by food and beverage companies have been known to selectively publish research that supports the benefits or safety of their products while suppressing the studies that may raise concern or the effect what it is causing in a negative way on our body, actually. This can lead to biased authorship decisions and misinterpretation of scientific evidence, which has, a number of medical condition getting more complex in today's arena. And I think nowadays you might have seen that there is a high increase in number of patients of blood pressure, diabetes, as well as the cancer, because people only report all the positive things about the food and beverage we are getting served, and they, although they mention the negative impacts in not in detail, either little or it's absent. And most of the people then they think only positive and go for intake of those materials in a larger chunk on daily basis, and then these kind of things happen. Conflict of interest in the financial research. In the field of finance, it can arise when researchers or authors they have financial ties to a specific company, and this can lead to biased research, reporting findings in favor. Influence of industry sponsored studies where funding sources has a vested interest in research outcomes can impact authorship decisions. And of course, all in all, it's important to note that these examples do not imply that all research funded by industries or with financial ties is biased. No, there are few instances where they highlight situation where conflict of interest can arise and potentially influence authorship decisions. So this is not going to apply that any industry or organization is funding the author, there is bias. No, there are still transparency, there are still very high level of ethical procedures they have followed, but there are few which still have things to complete to reach up to that level. So transparency, disclosure of applications, they can arise and potentially influence authorship decisions. And there is independent peer review of these kind of manuscripts, which are crucial in mitigating these conflicts and ensure the integrity of scientific research as well as the authorships. Disclosure and transparency, it can go for maintaining research integrity. So disclosing financial relationships, affiliations, and any potential conflict promotes the research integrity. It allows readers and reviewers to assess potential biases or influences that may exist and evaluate credibility of the research. Ethical considerations, they go for transparency in disclosing conflicts. It helps uphold the principle of fairness, honesty, and accountability in the research. It allows authors to demonstrate their commitment to the highest standards of integrity, like if you are disclosing everything in a one go. Building trust, that also shows that you are kind-hearted and ethical person, where you disclose and being transparent, and that gives you a very firm platform to build the trust between the researchers or your upcoming collaborator, author, and to a broader scientific community. It enhances trust in the research findings and conclusions. Your papers and your credit author statement and your disclaimer, those things they already tell you, are the people in who are reading your articles, and readers and stakeholders can make informed judgments about the potential impact of any biases by your paper itself. Peer review and evaluation, transparent disclosure of conflicts of interest enables reviewers and editors to assess potential bias. Reviewers can provide fair and objective evaluation of research and identify any potential conflicts, and they can report you. Informed decision making, if you are disclosing these things, it allows readers, policymakers, and other stakeholders to make informed decisions about the research findings, and your own image gets very positive in front of them. It enables them to consider the potential biases, and then they highlight it, and then they ask you for the comments. Journal and publication policies. Many journals and publications require authors to disclose any conflicts of interest as part of their submission process. I think I already told you. And these policies often require authors to provide a declaration of interest or sign a statement confirming the absence of conflict. Or they ask you that if there is a conflict of interest, you say yes, then you have to give details. If you say no, you just carry on. These policies, of course, you say no and you carry on, but if there is something which is coming after, the corresponding author is going to be responsible for that. And sometimes even there have been retraction of the manuscript because of those kind of activities. So one should not do like that. Regulatory compliance. In some fields, such as medical research and clinical trials, regulatory bodies and ethical committees mandate disclosure of conflict of interest. And failure to comply can have legal and regulatory consequences to the project as well as the PI and the group. Best practices for disclosing conflict of interest in authorship. When it comes to disclosing conflict in financial organization, following best practices ensures transparency, accountability, and all those things. So we'll start one by one. Here it says, understand and identify conflict of interest. You have to first work on the root cause of the problem, that from where this conflict is arising. So crucial for authors to have a clear understanding of what constitutes a conflict of interest in their specific field or context, and they should report it to the corresponding author if they are not in agreement. They should identify any financial, professional, or personal relationships that could potentially influence their objectivity, decision-making, or interpretation of research findings, and reporting the data in the manuscript. So they have to talk to the corresponding author that why this is happening, how this is happening. This is not the real case. Not because they want, rather it should be, I must use rather, it must be supported with the evidences, not only that you think that it should be like that. No. So one has to be very categorical with the evidence that it should be like that and it should not be like this based on the evidences. Timely and complete disclosure. Authors should disclose conflicts of interest in timely manner, ideally at the time of submission. Ideally at the time of submission or before the research or publication process begins. rather than once the manuscript is already published and then somebody is coming and asking for conflict of interest and all that stuff. Disclosure should be comprehensive, provided detailed information, of course, as I told you, with the evidence about nature of conflict, parties involved, and any potential financial or non-financial benefits. Transparent and accessible disclosure statements. Conflict of interest should be clearly stated in a separate section of research paper or report. It should be easily accessible and clearly visible to readers and stakeholders. It should be written in a plain language, avoiding jargons or any kind of legal statements and all that stuff. It should be very clear, actually. That's it, as simple as that. Specify funding sources. One has to very clearly give the acknowledgement from where you have secured funding, provide context and implications. And it's not that you are going to just disclose, but you should provide context to help readers understand the potential implication of this disclosed conflict of interest. And I think readers are smart, but they can even know that if you have not you would have not disclosed this, what could have been the complications or impact in future. This includes explaining how the conflict could be influenced the research design, methodology, interpretation of the results, and reporting. Consistency across the authors. The cases where there are multiple authors, each author should independently disclose their own conflict of interest or give all these rights to the corresponding author on their behalf in written, that whatever he or she is doing with this, we agree with the whole manuscript. Adhere to journal or publication guideline. They all the journals, they have their own guidelines, so corresponding author and all co-authors or project investigators should be respecting those guidelines, be it coming from any of the publication houses, and every journal has a specific guideline. Regular review and update, it has to be done, and corresponding author is responsible for that, to update the status of manuscript to all the co-authors. Independent verification, it may be appropriate to have independent party verify accuracy and completeness of disclosed conflict of interest, and it can provide an added layer of transparency and credibility. So it's more kind of third-party verification if you want. By following these best practices, authors can effectively disclose conflicts, maintain transparency, and uphold the integrity of financial organization authorship. And it allows readers and stakeholders to make informed judgments about the potential biases or influence that may exist, and evaluate the reliability and credibility of the research publication, as well as reliability of the corresponding author and the whole group, actually. There are case studies. I see there are some. Okay, there's a question coming from Dr. Pankaj K. Goswami. Observed currently a practice by publisher that asking the reviewer's name and contact details by communicating author of the article, how it is good and why it has been in practice nowadays. The thing is, especially these kind of list of reviewers they ask. Okay, just let me see how I can close this. Okay. Yes. So they ask, there are 2-3 points. The number one, let us be very clear that the number of reviewers they have asked us, suppose 3 or 5 or 4 reviewers they asked. Dr. Goswami, I appreciate that you have taken this to the here, and it's fantastic because many of us face this situation. So what happens is, the very first point to be noted, that these reviewers in 99.9% of chances are not going to be contacted by the editor or associate editor to review that particular manuscript for which they have been assigned by the author. One. Second, this is kind of totally independent and totally unpaid job to review a manuscript of anybody on earth, especially, or any scientist. So nobody, either editor or associate editors or the editorial team members or the reviewers, but it's a kind of a freelance job. So nobody is going to be paid for that. And even I or many of us must be getting n number of manuscripts to review on a daily basis. And because of our own busy schedule, we may or may not accept the manuscript to review. So in that case, directly or indirectly, these kind of information of this list of reviewer, like 4 or 5 from one of the authors, who it is getting into the system of the journal, where they indirectly create a pool of reviewers, and then based on the their expertise and keywords you supplied, the editor may or may not choose those particular reviewers, not for your own paper, but for other paper. Second, because since many people don't agree, then somehow the editor has to choose the another person as a reviewer. And for that, this is a kind of a repository in making, where things where people are in the list or in the data bank, which can be directly contacted to send the papers. Like, suppose many of us might have been getting papers from America, from European countries, from China, from Australia, and you might have seen like, okay, I have never met this person, but you are still getting it. So it hardly matters that you should not look at the person or the lab. You should look at the at the content of the manuscript, its originality, the information, and work on it. So so did I answer the question? I think yes. Divedi sir, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Sir, you are.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll go one by one. I think I have a few case studies, so we'll discuss that. And case study 1, Vioxx and Merck. So one prominent case of conflict of interest in financial organization authorship involved the pharmaceutical company Merck and for its drugs Vioxx. Several studies conducted on Vioxx, a pain medication, indicated an increased risk of cardiovascular event. And Merck had suppressed data and published misleading information about the drug safety. And the fact that the authors of these studies had financial ties to Merck, receiving funding and other benefits, this case highlighted importance of independent and unbiased research to ensure safety and efficacy of the medication. So you see these things we discussed, and this again comes under one of the case studies here. And Vioxx was eventually withdrawn from the market in 2004 due to mounting evidence of its cardiovascular risk. The case resulted in thousands of lawsuits against Merck and allegations of withholding critical safety. And this case underscored the importance of transparency and independent research in pharmaceutical authorship. And it highlighted the need of robust mechanism to identify and manage conflicts, ensuring that research findings are unbiased and reliable, because that deals with the life of a person. Study 2, Enron and conflicted research analyst. This scandal of 2001 exposed significant conflict of interest involving research analysts and their ties to Enron, an energy company that filed for bankruptcy amidst allegations of massive accounting fraud. Enron was considered highly successful and innovative company, and its stock price soared. However, it had engagement in fraudulent accounting practices, manipulating financial statements and hiding debt to portray a healthier financial position that it actually had. So during this period, research analysts from various investment banks are responsible, and they were providing recommendations and evaluations of this stock, which was factually wrong, actually. So the point is that if somebody is doing this kind of business, their fate is to get closed. Continue marketing and selling their products, these tobacco industries, without facing significant legal and regulatory challenges. And public awareness of risk of smoking, hindered implementation, all that comes into this health policy. Whistleblowers and investigate journalism, they shed light on tobacco industry's manipulative practices, leading to increased public awareness and regulatory action. And then disclosure of documents from companies' tobacco papers exposed extent of interference with scientific research. So they don't, highlight too much of the negative impact of the tobacco actually. Investment banks and conflicted analysts. Again, there are some banks and organizations which are not doing good, but still they are doing good on papers. But at the time comes when they really cross the limit, and then they are, gone from the society. Impact of conflict of credibility and integrity of the research. Bias is more like into a research process leading to manipulation or distortion of results. Selective reporting, you should not go for selective reporting, you should go for positive as well as negative reporting both. Suppression of unfavorable data, that should not be done, and conflict can also result in suppression of unfavorable data that contradicts the desired outcomes. So to be transparent and being honest, one should report favorable as well as unfavorable. I mean, report whatever you have seen in the experiments, that's it. Questionable methodologies, you should do as detailed as possible. Undisclosed financial relationship, you should disclose everything. Peer review and editorial biases, and public interest and reputation should also be taken well care of. Consequences, compromised objectivity, erosion of trust, diminished integrity, and then slowly the paper, the research output, the research group, they really have a bad name if they do this kind of conflict of interest activities in a negative way. Biased research and information, misguided policy decisions, financial and legal consequences, undermined fairness and inquiry, equity. And to mitigate these kind of consequences, establish and enforce robust conflict of interest policies and procedures. Transparency, disclosure, and independent oversight must be there so that these kind of complex and embarrassing situations may not arise, or if they arise, they have to be managed well by the corresponding author. Institutional review boards and research ethic committee. I think most of the institutions in India nowadays have these types of committees which are going to check all these kind of activities which are ruining the name of the PI or corresponding author or even the institute. One has to stick with the journal publication guideline from any of the publication houses. Professional code of conduct must be there by the PI or the corresponding author. Government regulation and policies must be respected because there are ethical committees in most of the institutions now. Funding agency guidelines has to be followed word by word because finally they are funding your particular research. And conflict of interest committee, there is again subcommittee which recommends any type of activities at the institute level. One has to be follow that, and their recommendation has to be taken into the consideration. Strategies for mitigating conflict, how we can avoid that. Disclosure and transparency, very important. So one has to keep everything very clear and transparent. This is the situation to all the co-authors. Whosoever wants to have more question or more detailed information, just contact the corresponding author so that everybody is happy over there. Independent oversight and review. We all can review and oversight the manuscript before it goes to the submission. So all the corresponding author and co-authors can read it, correct it, and finally submit it. Recusal and avoidance of any wrong thing can be practiced. Separation of roles and responsibilities should be there. Who is doing what, so that there is no overlapping of the roles and responsibility, and there is no tussle in between the colleagues. and peer review and independent evaluation should be done. Codes of ethics and conducts must be followed. Education and training should be given for these kind of conflict of interest. Collaboration and collaboration policies has to be respected. Robust conflict of interest policies and procedures should be in the place, and public awareness and engagement should also be considered by the institute and the co-authors. Collaborative research and conflict resolution. The main finding which starts from the scratch is to identify the conflict. Once you have identified the conflict, the root cause, you can work on that. Then you go for shared understanding, like how to resolve it. Then you balance your interest. Okay, you are getting positive or negative here, I am getting positive or negative here. And then we can resolve this issue with the help of some kind of solution. And by doing this, you build more trust to each other, either with co-authors or your collaborator. Mitigating bias and unethical behavior, you have to close down as soon as possible and clean the air so that you can proceed further. And by these kind of practices, you learn and you improve for your future research. Institutional help and support and policies. At institute level, you can develop some kind of policy. You can go for awareness and education, like currently Amity University Lucknow campus is doing a great job by providing 1 week full faculty development program on particularly research and ethical matters, which is of paramount importance nowadays. So it's more kind of creating awareness, because faculty will be learning here, then they will go back to the institution, they will spread the word, educating more people, so that these kind of things can be minimized. Disclosure mechanisms, review and oversights. Support and guidance, I think institute provides a lot. Enforcement and consequences, they can discuss the cases and complete the things. They can, based on the strong ethical guidelines and a strong integrity and honesty, the collaboration and networking can be increased, and continuous improvement and evaluation of self should be done so that we may not commit any mistake. Okay, so the responsible conduct of research is of paramount importance in minimizing conflict of interest. And there are some points like objectivity and impartiality, trust and credibility, disclosure and transparency, ethical considerations, adherence to institutional and regulatory policies, peer review and collaboration, research integrity, as well as reproducibility. These are the guidelines for the reviewers. Co-authoring publications with at least one of the authors in the past 3 years should be avoided. Being colleagues with the same section, department, or similar organization units in the past 3 years should be avoided. Supervising or having supervised the doctoral work of authors, or being supervised or having been supervised should be avoided. Receiving professional or personal benefit resulting from the review, having a personal relationship with the author, and having a direct or indirect financial interest in the paper being reviewed should be avoided by the reviewer. Mitigation of conflicts, the disclosure and potential conflict of interest that could influence the research or interpretation, adhere to ethical guidelines, ensure that research findings are reported clearly, provide sufficient details in methodology and results, misinterpretation or selective reporting should be avoided, engage collaborative decision making. You ask the agreement of all the co-authors, respond constructively to the feedback or comments from the reviewers, adhere to responsible data management guidelines, stay informed about the best practices and ethical guidelines, and engage in continuous professional development that helps stay updated with your group and institutes. So thank you so much to all of you for patiently hearing me, and I would welcome questions if there are.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Vivekan, for explaining these conflict of interest like in a broader way. Now I would like to invite Professor Mala, if you like, you may take some question from the audience.
Okay. I can see there's one question. Our name is not clear because it is written Redmi. And Dr. Vivekanand, the question goes like this. In case of patent application involving bioactivity of a lichen species,
Yes,
which
madam.
was identified by scientists of another organization,
Yeah.
no acknowledgement was given to him in patent draft by guide. Here, conflict of interest resulted in soaring relationship between researcher and the scientist without any fault on the part of researcher. Here, I want to know that the drafting guide must have some interest, as young researcher don't have any say in drafting solution.
Okay. So the first thing is, I'm sure this comes from the IPR in India, isn't it? So whenever the scientists and researchers, they would have been applying for this patent, they would have sit together and read the guidelines very deeply, that how, because I'm sure there is no place that it will not say not to acknowledge. So the person would have been acknowledged and his or her name would have been mentioned as per the guidelines of Government of India for this patent application. So there has been, maybe the person who was making the application, or at least this application would have gone through either the scientist or the researcher, where even, because the person who was applying, he's just a professional person. He takes the consultancy fee and he works for you and me. So it's the principal responsibility of the researcher to take care of the content, what is going into the application, which could have been corrected uh, by the researcher side, recommending the person who was working on the application to add the name of the scientist who was who helped the research in this lichen species identification. So I think there are still, I think it's not too late. And if they approach to the IPR directorate and talk to the person, and it can be mutually solved, I'm sure.
Thank you, sir. I hope the query is clear. Now, the next question is from Dr. Garima Avasti. She's asking how can we differentiate between corresponding author and principal author, and how they will get weightage in score.
Corresponding author is clear to me. Principal author, madam, what I'm supposing is the first author. Is it Garima?
Yes, I think so.
We can say first author, or we can say a senior author.
Yeah. So in that case, I think the both are important. Like especially once it comes to the corresponding author, he or she is solely responsible for the content in the manuscript. And it has n number of different kind of categories for giving weightage. Like most of the time, the first author is either the PhD student or the master's student, and then the corresponding author is the supervisor. But in our system, as well as in other Western countries, there are chances that some of the time, even the student himself acts as a corresponding author, putting the supervisor with his permission as a co-author. So that has started in India also. So the thing is, weightage wise, if one has to be given, then different universities and institutes have different scoring procedures. It's suppose if it's like 5 marks for one SCI journal publication, then the 2 marks goes to the corresponding author and 3 marks goes to the first author. It's like that. So it depends like which, how they are going to weight. My point is like, yeah, corresponding author is always there. But as a first author, since the person is at the start of the career, he should given more weightage. Actually, what I exemplified, like 2 marks to the corresponding and 3 marks to the first author. Garima, do you think I answered your question?
I hope so. I hope so.
Sir, madam.
Any other question?
Okay, Garima is saying, no, sir, first author and principal authors are separately given in PBAS. Okay. I don't know then what is the difference in first and principal author, because corresponding is very clear to me. I think first is also very clear to us.
Yes.
What is the basis of or what standard is being followed to differentiate between the first and principal author?
Okay, sir. Any other question from audience, please post if you have any query.
May also raise your hand and then can discuss directly. Anyone?
Yes, please. If not now, even you can write a mail to me. So that's not a problem. I am very fast
Yes.
at the
Yes.
mail also.
So, my query, can I ask a question?
Sir, ma'am, please.
So my query is that in case of any conflict of interest, suppose author has not reported any conflict of interest while submitting manuscript, and if it arises later on, so is there any legal issues in that case?
Yes, it can happen, madam. Reason, suppose X has conflict of interest with Y, okay, and Y has not mentioned X name in the paper,
Yes.
and X has all those formal evidences in the form of mail and papers and research funding agencies, guidelines, and all that stuff. And if the X goes to the court of law, of course, there could be legal complications.
Legal complications. Okay, sir. So, right. I can see one more question from
Yes.
Dr. Pooja.
Mhm.
She's saying, thank you so much, sir, for your nice lecture. So mostly students' name is given as first author and postdocs are given second place. But many times the contribution of postdoc is more. Is it fine?
Yeah, it's a more kind of a postdoc should be more generous. Reason, the postdoc has already attended the PhD and he is already working as a postdoc, and sooner or later he will be at a permanent position. So in that case, my personal view is, like, suppose postdoc has the data for at least 3 manuscripts. So at least in 1 or 2 manuscript, he should, give it to the PhD or a student's name as a first author, because they are at the start of their own career at a very young age. So, and it is fine up to a mark, but it should not be overburdened actually. So out of 3, 1 or 2 could go to the student's name as a first author, or if the supervisor and postdoc, they are really kind, they can go for joint first authorship of the student as well as the postdoc. That is also one way of giving a solution actually.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, one more question again raised by Dr. Garima Awasthi.
Okay.
And the question goes like that. Sir, the conflict of author question raised by Mala ma'am is applicable for senior research associate or senior project associate also?
This is not limited to the designation or position. It can even be related to the student also. Suppose student is ready with his daily diary, what he or she has been doing, and the supervisor have not given him the authorship, he or she can always discuss this with the supervisor, how to solve this, because he or she has worked all the time for this project, and once the publication is there, his or her name is missing. So Garima, it's not limited to the senior research or junior research, but it's related to a human being who is working for that project. So you are correct. Pooja is saying there are many
So
places.
one
Yeah,
more
yes.
question from Dr. Pooja is there, that there are many places where the name of head or director's name is included as co-author. How can we justify this trend?
This is more kind of, yeah, I do have come across with this kind of addition as a co-author of the institute's administrator or department's head and all that stuff. So this is a sometimes kind gesture to the institute or the department because of the facilities given, or the administrator have worked a lot to bring those kind of research facilities to the department or institute. So sometimes it's a very, very important to acknowledge the infrastructure build with the rigorous work what the administrator has done, and to give him acknowledgement in the form of co-author. So that is fine if it is in this way. If it is just like that, it has to be well taken care of, and it could be discussed among the people at the institute.
Again, Dr. Pooja Srivastava is asking, in case of equally contributing authors, who will be treated as first author? Both, or that person whose name is at first place?
No, Pooja, both. The thing is that if my name is and your name is there as a star, and in the footnote of the list of author, it has written that contributed equally, it means we both are the first author and we both will be treated as a first author. It hardly depends whose name is coming first or second. If it is mentioned that both contributed equally, so either your name comes first or my name comes first, we both will be treated as first author. And you can although your name may be first or second, suppose if it's second, you can always write that this paper is as a first author from my side. It's like that.
Brilliant. Sir, another question is raised by Dr. Rahul Gupta. He's asking if all authors have given consent at the time of publication regarding no conflict of interest. After publication, if any of the authors claim conflict of interest, will it be considered by editors for retracting, etc.?
No, the thing is, at this age and at this maturity, even editors thinks that if you are signing the document, you are in your full senses, and the work is not have been done overnight. It is the biological work which have taken like 6 months and more and then writing the paper, getting the draft ready and communicating. So sometimes it takes 9 months to a year and many years to communicate those manuscript. So if you are signing the conflict of interest document, once you have communicated the paper, and then out of the blue, next morning you are saying, no, I have done something wrong, then the ounce lies on the co-author itself, not on the corresponding or editor. So if you have signed one document, it's not signing in the sense, it just says like you agree with the things. So if you had something in your mind and you are trying to claim that afterwards, either it should be with very strong evidence, goes to the editor or corresponding author, and if it's very small, very trivial, it may not be get considered, because these things have started at least a year ago. Where were you when you were signing the document? So these are kind of questions one may face.
I think you have answered all the queries, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for taking all the questions and answering it up to the satisfaction of all the participants.
Thank you.
So with this, I would like to conclude this session by putting formal vote of thanks. My heartfelt thanks to Dr. Vivekanand for enlightening talk we have just witnessed on the topic of conflict of interest on various aspects, that is financial, organizational, authorship. We have had a privilege of gaining valuable insight into the crucial aspect of scientific and academic integrity. Thank you to the expertise and wisdom of our distinguished speaker. First and foremost, I would like to express my gratitude to Sir for sharing his knowledge and shedding light on this complex looking matter, but you have simplified it to utmost level. The presentation was thought-provoking, engaging, and meticulous, and leaving us with profound understanding on the significance of conflict of interest in research. Your deep understanding and ability to articulate the topic in a comprehensive manner have truly captivated our audience as well as to all the panelists in this. So with that, I thank you once again for sparing time. I understand that you are at this time you are at in Sweden, and at very early hour you have delivered this talk. Thank you for taking time, and thank you so much for this very beautifully articulated lecture. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Vivekanand. It was nice interacting with you.
Yeah.
Really. Thanks.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, madam. And thank you
Thank you
all the
so much.
participants to patiently listening me. And you are very welcome to contact me anytime. I am very active at the mail. I may not, pick phones all the time, but I reply for sure. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
And one information for audience, kindly join tomorrow's session with the same link, and please attend all the session throughout. Thank you so much, audience also. Thank you so much, sir, once again.
Thank you. See you.